spread here.
Thank you, everyone. We will reconvene from closed session and we have nothing to report. But thank you all for coming and welcome to our February 27th meeting for here for City Council. Madam Councilwoman Sandy Amar, would you please lead the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a commendation for our previous planning commissioner, but he is not here today. So we'll go ahead and continue that item without objection to our next meeting. Seeing that there is no objection, that shall be the order. Next item on the agenda is the agenda approval. Unless there's objection, I will consider the agenda approved. Seeing and hearing no objection, that shall be the order. The consent calendar is next. Are there any questions or concerns with regard to the consent calendar, council members? Seeing none, does the public have any comment on the consent calendar? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Mayor, please, Madam Mayor, Madam Clerk, please call a roll.
Councilmember Amara.
Yes.
Holmes.
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
And Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
All right, let the record show that the motion has been adopted 4-0. Councilman Berlant is absent this evening. All right, so we're going to move on to our next item on the agenda, which is a public comment. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to address the council on an item not scheduled for action tonight. We can't take action on said items, but we can refer them to staff for subsequent discussion at a subsequently noticed council meeting. So with that said, I'll open public comment. Is there any public comment? Yes, please come on up and state your name at our lectern.
It is on the calendar, so I don't know.
So if the item is scheduled, then if you would please wait until the item comes up and then we'll give you an opportunity to comment.
Was it on the consent calendar?
No, this is on the fire inspection. service.
Yeah, he is here. for
Okay,
the public
so
hearing.
we will collect public comment when that item comes up.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on an item that is not scheduled for action tonight? Madam CEO?
For the record, Jackie Weston, CEO of the Auburn Chamber of Commerce. I just want to let everyone know on the council and in the city that the chamber has taken the St. Patrick's Day and made an official parade this year. So we will be, with the help of the wonderful police department and fire department, shutting down the streets at 5:17. This quick little parade will go through and then we'll head over to ARD for delicious corned beef and cabbage. Sorry, I'm Jewish, not Irish. Corned beef and cabbage dinner. So I would like to invite everyone to come. Very affordable, only $25, unless you want a VIP table. But
And you look directly at Councilman Holmes.
I
so-
know Councilman Holmes likes his corned beef and cabbage. And the roller derby girls will be serving if you're VIP table, so you don't even have to get up to get your green beer. They'll bring it to you.
They're gonna
So-
roll it over to you.
AuburnChamber.net, check it out. It's gonna be awesome. And thank you, APD, for your help with this.
What time's the parade? 5, did you say?
5:17.
5:17.
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Jonathan Wright, Community and Economic Development Director, normally not giving public comment, but I don't normally have an opportunity to share a new employee with the council because I just don't get the opportunity to hire that many that often. I would like to introduce you to Ty Richardson. Ty Richardson comes on as our airport management analyst, as well as a number of other things. You know, I've hired a lot of people in my time. And every now and then you have that one person that comes up, they interview, and it just clicks. You know immediately that this person would be ideal for this position. And lucky enough for me, he agreed to fill this position. So I can tell you that in the few short weeks he's already been here, he's already retrieved around $90,000 in FAA grants that were outstanding. He just helped me close out a SACOG grant, which we'll wait on a check for that too. But he's been immense help, and my stress level was from here to here. So anyway, Ty Richardson.
I should have written something to follow that.
Yes,
Hi,
welcome.
I'm.
We're excited to have you.
I'm happy to be here.
I should qualify. Ty is an airport guy, so he's been around the Auburn airport for decades. Actually has an airplane, is a pilot, gets along really well with the airport community. We did have an interview panel consisting of people from the airport, and all of them said, yep, he's the guy. So he's got a real estate background, so he can also help me with the economic development things.
Perfect.
Super with it. And like I said, he's already gotten his pen to paper and is making us some money. So I appreciate it. So we won't talk anymore.
All right, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you so much for bringing him. I appreciate that. Ty, welcome to the city of Auburn, and we look forward to great things. So we have a wonderful airport. It is a gem for us, so we're glad that it will be in good hands. So thank you so very much.
So, Madam Mayor, I have a,
Yes, you have a public comment, or would you like to keep it, reserve it for the committee?
no, I have a public comment.
Okay.
Yes, so,
Councilman Holmes?
and I think I've talked to a number of authorities throughout the county and elsewhere about, I think it's time for the city of Auburn to seriously consider joining the Greater Sacramento Economic Council. The cost of joining is relatively light, but I think in view of some of the planning that the city would like to do, that we would have an advantage of being a member of that organization. So just and I won't, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Yes.
I have a quick public comment, just for anyone who is looking for something fun to do with their kids. On March 3rd, Skyridge School is doing a star party. It's open to the whole community. They're having the beginning is going to be a science carnival from 5 to 7. And then from 7 to 8, they're going to have a star party where they're looking at the stars, and they're having NASA Globe special guests come with their really cool big telescopes. And they're going to be out on the field, and even our Public Works Department, thank you to them, is going to be turning down the lights so it's easier to see the stars. So yeah, if anyone's interested in coming out, bringing their family and friends, it's open to everyone, not just the folks at the school. So should be great.
And that's March 3rd. did you
March
say?
3rd.
Okay, March 3rd, and they're going to do the stargazing at from 7 to 8 p.m.
From 7 to 8, they'll have something from 5 to 7 before that.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, any additional public comment at this time? All right, Madam Clerk, is there any online public comment?
There is none received.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on then. Public comment is hereby closed. Move on to public hearing. We have one item on the public hearing agenda, and that is for the fire fee schedule. I do have a list here, the proceedings. So I've announced the item, and I will hereby open the public hearing, and we have a staff report. So I'd like to ask staff to present this item, please.
That report will be presented by Chief Spencer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, fellow council members. For the record, Dave Spencer, your fire chief. I will reflect back on our previous meeting in which we brought the bulk of this item forward to share with you about the actual fire fees and the study that was done. I do recognize that there might be a little bit of confusion with regard to procedure, because normally we would bring forward policy and then bring forward the process of the fee schedule. In this case, we're flopping that for two reasons. One is many of the questions that were coming to me is, what would the fees be? And as you note, one of the biggest focuses of this is the parcel fee inspection. And I had no way to determine what that fee would actually be without doing this study as in best practices. So now that we have that fee established, we're bringing these fees forward, Now, it will also come with an ordinance, but before we bring that ordinance forward, it's really important for me to hear from our community and our constituents about what they see, what are some of the challenges. They're the end user, if you will, of this process. And so I suspect that if we wrote the ordinance prior to getting that feedback, that we would have some conflict. And so in order to try to eliminate that conflict, what we'll be doing is a series of town hall meetings here in the next month or two to bring this forward and give the community an opportunity to provide us for feedback. And then at that point, with the help of the city attorney, we'll craft up the ordinance and move it forward based on that information that we receive.
So if I understand, I'm sorry, may I ask?
Yes, I'll open this up to questions for the council.
So tonight, we will not adopt a resolution to pass the fees. Is that correct?
We're bringing forward the fees. We're continuing to bring forward the fees, but the policy of implementing that has not been crafted yet. So we had to start with what the actual fees were. And then, and I will use the example of the parcel inspection by way of example. That if we put that into policy now and later on we decide that maybe, for example, those that are compliant with that, we waive the fee, we want to make sure that we capture that information before we bring that policy forward. So that's an example of why we're waiting to bring the actual ordinance forward.
Okay, can I continue to ask questions?
Yes, I was just going to follow a comment on that because I think that's really important for everyone to understand this evening. We will ask questions, we'll have comments, deliberation, the public will have an opportunity to speak. The council is being asked to adopt the fee schedule that's been established here. It does include the residential parcel inspection. But I just want to make it very clear that even if the council adopts that fee tonight, it cannot be assessed until we have an ordinance.
Correct.
The council does not have authority currently to conduct these annual inspections. The only way we can get that authority is through the ordinance. And that's what our chief is saying is he's going to take this show on the road. We'll have a series of town hall meetings to really flush out this issue of these annual inspections. And then he will craft an ordinance with our legal counsel, and then that will come back to the council for additional deliberations and questions and potentially being revised or what have you. And it's only after that ordinance has been enacted that we'll have an opportunity to then assess the fee. So just want to make it really clear that just if the council acts tonight, it's just setting that fee. It's really a placeholder because we cannot assess it until we have that authority to do so. So with that, Madam Council Member, please proceed with your questions.
So yeah, that's part of my issue or questions here will it be discussed later based on the town hall meetings, whether or not it'll be for every parcel? It could be maybe Firewise parcels will be exempt. So those decisions will be later. What about low income? What about, how will you go about I see you nodding.
Well, because I appreciate your question, because those were some of the conversations that the city attorney and I were having just this afternoon about some of the examples of why we would modify our fee schedule for those that have functional needs, those that are disparate, various reasons. We want to encourage compliance. So maybe we waive the fee altogether for those that are already compliant, but yet at the same time, we also recognize that there is a percentage of those that will not be compliant, and we need to have some mechanism to be able to enforce the process. And so that's the other part of this is how do we roll this out? We have a general premise or idea, as we've talked about in past, to do the city into thirds over a course of 3 years. Now, that being said, it may very well be that when we get that town hall feedback, that maybe we do a proof of concept for a smaller section the first year, just to demonstrate what that looks like. These are the variables that I think are really important for us to make sure that we go through this process, and that in the end we have a program that's functional and efficient and works for what we need here.
So, but this is not an enforcement mechanism. This is a fee that will be assessed to each and every home. So how will you enforce? So let's say you came to my home and I would pay the $1,200.
No, no,
Or excuse me,
$211.
$211 is 1,200 there's 1,200 places you will visit. $211. So on top of that, how will you, and I have $5,000 worth of work that I have to be done. So will that be the following 3 years that you will, that you will come and check that out, or how will you enforce that?
Yeah, so our vision is that we will come to, and I'll use your example to kind of make it specific. So we'll come to your home, we'll do the inspection. There'll be a fee associated with that. That is the base of this process. That's without any feedback, that's without any variances. I suspect that as we get feedback from the community and we come out to your home and we identify that you have no violations, you are compliant with all the standards that we have set forth with defensible space, that we potentially waive the fee for you because there's nothing to be done, and we want to support and encourage that compliance. By comparison, we go to your neighbor's house and they're not compliant, and we assign the fee. Now, whatever the work is that's required to become compliant is the work that's to be compliant. There's just no choice in that. That's part of the process that we're in and have been in now for many years, trying to get our community up to speed and understand how important it is to have that defensible space in line with the current requirements that we have. This is just moving this forward to give us a mechanism to say, we're going to do these inspections. It's important to do these inspections, and how that lays out the specific details are, there's still some things that we need to hear from our community, make sure we do it correctly.
Okay. And then do our neighbors, the fire, I know Cal Fire, do they charge for inspections then?
I
Do you know?
I believe they do. Forgive me, I don't know all the different jurisdictions and what their fees are. I can tell you that this is a very unique approach to the parcel inspections. And there's only one entity that I know of that is addressing it this way, and that's LA County.
LA County.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Yes, Councilwoman Vidal Harris.
Thank you, Chief. Really appreciate you coming to us again and explaining all this, especially the process, because at first when I saw this, I thought that we were going to be enforcing and starting to do the fees tonight. That's not going to happen until the ordinance gets through. I think that was very clear. With my work in the utility world, we have universal rates that are for everyone. And we have, especially right now, some really fun rate increases that happen in the utility world. But one thing that we're very careful with is that we don't negatively impact our low income customers.
Correct.
So normally, along with any kind of rate or fee, you come up with a separate plan or program for those low income customers so they aren't impacted. So I would be interested to see, along with whatever ordinance you have for implementation, what that program or plan is, what that income level would be, the application process that would be involved in it. Because though I appreciate the interest in waiving fees, it needs to be fair and across the board for everyone. So those rules need to be stipulated ahead of time, so we're not picking and choosing who gets a fee waiver. So that would be my concern. Do you have any ideas around that kind of thing?
Well, and that's exactly what we're talking about. I think we do need to identify our folks that are of need in our community. And in doing so, to your point, having a defined path for that, because at the end of the day, the defensible space still needs to occur. So how do we manage that, right? That's the first question, whether we engage our service clubs or volunteer groups or whatever the case may be, somehow we need to address it. And so those are part of the discussions, right? And so I don't have all the answers for you at this moment, but those are all the things that we're talking about, thinking about as we roll this program out.
So is the plan along with this program to roll out some kind of process for helping those who are low income, who can't I mean, you can go out and assess fees on people who aren't compliant all you want, but if they're low income and they can't afford to fix the $5,000, they can't afford the 200 probably either, and it's not going to get fixed.
Right.
So is there a plan? Because I would want to see alongside with the ordinance, the plan for actually getting those things addressed and helping those people who can't help themselves or don't have the money to be able to address those issues on their community, on their property. So is that the plan to come to also bring us that and not just we'll figure it out later kind of a response?
Yeah, well, I think that's it, is we have to be fair across the board and consistent, and that consistency brings comfort, right?
Mhm.
And so in that, I think that's part of the discussion, and I don't want to come forward and mandate that it looks a particular way, because everybody has input and different viewpoints. And so trying to find that balance of how we approach this that is effective and efficient, but doesn't negatively impact those that are of need.
Okay, great. And then also what was stated before about other neighboring places and what they're doing, I would be interested to just get a list of what comparable areas are doing to do their compliance, or if they're not doing anything, just to know that too.
Right.
Thank you.
And I believe that the fee study that was conducted did take into consideration what our neighbors were doing as far as assessing fees and so forth. Not necessarily on the parcel, the inspection, but on all the other fees. That was part of their charge to see what others were doing. It was,
Yeah.
they had like 5 different policy areas and.
Yeah, I'd just be interested to see on the parcel thing, what other.
Yeah,
folks
on
are
the,
doing
just the
around.
parcel.
Yeah.
Mhm. That sounds like it's just LA County is the only other jurisdiction that's doing that.
Well, you said it was the only one doing this particularly, but there may be other things that are not exactly this that other people are doing, or no one is doing enforcement at all. Is that kind of what you're saying?
The only agency that I was able to find that actually did parcel inspections like we're talking about was LA County.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman Holmes?
Yes, well, I am happy to see that we got a list of fees that you can actually read. And
Thank you, Madam Clerk, for that. I said there are several of us that needed a little bit bigger.
anyway,
Including me.
it looks to me like many of these are for new construction.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
is there a breakdown of how many are for new construction, how many for existing construction, or?
Yeah, we didn't separate it out, but I can give you a couple of different examples. I sent you a note several weeks ago about a building that was flooded. And it was caused by a sprinkler head that was broken by workers. In that case, that particular building requires an annual inspection of that building to ensure that that system is functioning and operating correctly and has been certified. Had we been doing that inspection, we would have caught that. And in the event that occurred, we would have been able to mitigate it much quicker because we had already done that. So that would be an example of an existing structure. Anything that has, by way of example, cooking with a hood and duct system requires an annual inspection. Those that do welding and cutting, and it's all based on fire risk.
Okay, so many of these are for businesses that need to be inspected for the size of the unit, the size of the rooms, and the, as you suggest, the sprinkler systems and that sort of thing. But when it comes to a private residence, what is your estimate of how many private residences in Auburn might be affected by this?
Well, we've determined that we have 5,000 parcels roughly that we need to actually do the inspection on. That is a heavy lift for us as an agency. So we've broken it down into thirds to be able to address that. And so that would mean that we would touch that parcel every third year or every 3 years.
Yeah.
And so 5,000 would be your answer to your question.
Yeah, okay. Well, broken down into 3 years.
Correct.
Implementation, okay. And So I see a lot of these are new flat fees. And were there no other than Los Angeles, were there no other communities that you were able to find a list of fees that were comparable to what Los Angeles was?
The only one that we're talking about with regard to LA County is the actual parcel inspection. Is that your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other fees are all compared to jurisdictions around.
That are local to this area, local to this county.
Yeah, okay, all right, thank you.
Councilman Holmes, do you have any other questions?
I think that'll do it for the moment.
For the moment, okay, great, thank you. So I appreciate that, and I can see here on this list, which again, thank you very much for making it large so that I can read it as well, really appreciate it. It looks like, for the most part, we are conducting all of these activities now. There's just a couple of areas where you've got a new hourly fee for family daycare inspections, other fire code inspection, things of that nature. It doesn't say there's an actual volume there. But for the most part, we've done at least these things once a year, if not more. I do appreciate the fact that we're looking to ensure that we can recover the actual costs of that particular activity. And that in some instances where it has been determined that the cost was actually less than the fee that was being charged, in those instances, the fee would be recommended to be lowered so that we don't cross that threshold. That's very important to me. I appreciate, the detail, the level of detail of this particular fee study, the different policies that they took into consideration when they were looking at this. Let's see here. I think they established 4 different, anyway. So I did appreciate that, and it's important to note the fact that right now we're subsidizing with the general fund, approximately, we're covering right now, it looks like cost the department about $359,618 to provide the services currently. We're recovering about 6% of that. So about $21,514. So right now, $338,104 are coming from the general fund to subsidize for those services. And I think it's important for us to take into consideration that the council really hasn't had the opportunity to determine that it wants to actually subsidize. That's why we're bringing this up now, that we may want to use those monies for other fire services, but right now they're going to cover these costs of these inspections that are being done. And so I'm very glad to see that we are bringing this forward. I don't really have specific questions. My questions really are going to be with regards to the ordinance and how we're going to roll this out. For example, I think I might like to see a sunset clause to provide some assurance to people that, you can always extend that, but just to have that in there to provide some people with comfort level. But we'll have the opportunity to discuss that at a later date. We're just focusing on these fees. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go ahead, and we don't really have, Madam Clerk, I know we said, statements from the project proponent, but that's really staff at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up for public comment. So if you have a comment on the fee schedule as proposed, please come up to the lectern and state your name, and we'd be happy to hear your comment. Absolutely. Yeah.
I know the chief, my name is Mark Williams. I live in the city of Auburn. I've been here for 14 years, 27 in the community up in the North Auburn in the airport area, but moved down to the city 14 years ago and much better. I became aware of this ordinance or proposed ordinance reading
I just want to correct it. We're not discussing any ordinance tonight.
Okay.
What we're talking about is establishing a fee schedule.
Okay.
The ordinances will come at a later time. So I
And
just want to be.
I'm completely, I see law enforcement back.
Yeah, I
there,
just
so
want to be crystal
I'm
clear.
completely out of line and I don't want to be ushered out.
No, you won't
I'm
be.
old and brittle.
I just don't want to confuse it that the ordinance is something that we will be discussing at a later date. So
Okay.
the fee schedule.
could I run through a couple things and you can just tell me
Absolutely.
inappropriate and get the chain and usher me out? Is this proposed ordinance or anything, or the fee schedule, is this required by law? Is this something that's a state law or something? Is one of my questions. Another one is back in November of last year, it was put to the voters for a tax to support the Auburn Union School District,
A bond.
a bond, and that was shot down.
Mhm.
And I'm just thinking right now in the current economic times that a tax or a lien or whatever you want to call it on parcels, really it isn't fair to the public. If somebody was out of compliance, I agree with the fee, hit them with the fee, with the fine, whatever is appropriate. But if somebody has no issues at their home, I don't see any reason every 3 years to have some type of money given out. My homeowners, about every 2 years, about every other year, comes out with an independent fire contractor. I don't know where they come from. I don't know who they are. They show up, they walk around the property, take a bunch of pictures, send it to my insurance company and say all is well. You know, you're good, full speed ahead. So another question I had just real quick, and I'll get out of here and let you guys go to your business. Who's going to be doing these inspections? I know that our fire service is greatly understaffed. And with the amount of rain we're getting and the right around the corner, you wouldn't know it looking out the window, but spring is around the corner and the upcoming fire season, we're going to need all the personnel we have on the fire lines. And where's the personnel going to come from to do these inspections is a question I have. But the chief shot a bunch of holes in my questions with the public forum, and that's probably the more appropriate place for most of this stuff I have on my sheet here. But that's all I have, really.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify, one of the questions that you did have is it required? We are required to, as a city, to recover our costs of service. So that way we're not subsidizing, using our money and taxpayer money to subsidize somebody. So if a business needs to have an inspection,
Correct.
it needs to be paid for and the hours need to be paid for. So that way we're not using taxpayer money to subsidize it. That's the majority of this. Whether we want to use our time and energy to do those parcel inspections and cover that with people paying for it rather than it being subsidized by everyone. That's the question that
No,
we need to
I
figure out.
absolutely
Yeah.
agree with businesses being
Yeah, that's,
looked at and inspected and stuff like that, but just homes.
I think the
that are
parcel thing is
within-
definitely
within
still up for
compliance.
debate and
Yeah.
we still need to figure out how that's going to work. You're right.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
All good.
Thank you very much for your questions. And
Thank you.
what I'll do is I'll ask our fire chief if you want to, you can go ahead and sit down.
Okay.
If you, do you have any more comments?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you
No,
so much.
thank you.
Thank you. Chief, if you want to just, he had asked a couple of questions with regards to whether or not the residential parcel inspection program is required by the state. He also made a statement with regards to it being fair to assess fees, but then also who would do the inspection. So I know that these are issues that you're going to talk about with the ordinance. But right now, there is not state law does not require us to conduct these inspections. Is that correct? No, I'm talking strictly about the annual residential parcel inspection. That really is, right now, state law does not require fire departments to conduct an annual residential parcel inspection.
The only state law that's required for us to do an inspection on a residential property is related to home being in the very high severity zone and the sale of that home.
Mhm.
And that's required within 1 year of that sale that they receive that inspection.
Okay.
That is the only thing that's in state law.
That's in state law now. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Are there other public comments at this time? Madam Clerk, are there any comments online?
There is no public comment in the email, and I have indicated to our Zoom guests if they had public comment to raise their hand, and there are no hands raised at this time.
Okay. I got to look at my little cheat sheet here. So at this point, what I'll do is I'll bring this back to the council. If we have any additional questions, are there any additional questions? Yes.
Yeah, I just had I think the gentleman, Mark Williams, asked the question. about who would be conducting it. So 5,000 homes divided in thirds still is a big major task. So are we going to hire people to do that? What is the plan, or do we have a?
It would be great if we could hire the folks. However, that requires revenue. And so currently it would be our line staff, our firefighters, going out and doing those 1,200 inspections over the course of approximately 4 to 6 months at the beginning of the season, so that they're completed before we get into the late summer.
But I would clarify that given that, with this fee, this the proposed $211 fee, if we were to generate the kind of revenue that's projected, we might be able to hire another firefighter or another staff person to help perform those inspections. So we wouldn't be taking our firefighters off the line. Again, it's all about ensuring that we are recovering the costs of these services. And so that's the reason there would be a fee in the first place. So just to kind of, so right now, the inspections that we do, because right now we do, when a homeowner asks if you'll come out and take a look at their property and determine whether or not it's, fire safe, you will do that, and there is no charge. And that is our line staff that are going out there and conducting those inspections now. And those kinds of inspections would remain free to all. So anybody could still call and say, would you come out and take a look at my property and let me know if I'm safe or not?
Yes, and to further clarify your question about the inspection process and our line staff as it relates to their core mission and their duties, it is ideal that we could ultimately hire a defensible space inspector that would be a seasonal employee that would work during that period of time, essentially a seasonal worker, that reduce costs for us, that becomes more efficient for us, and can then use our line staff for their core mission. However, as we've done over this last several years, I think it's important for us to do a proof of concept for our community so that they understand what it looks like and how our success is generated, and that we have some data to point to. And so until we get to that point, I think it's prudent to use our line staff to be able to see what works, see what doesn't work, and then move it forward.
Yeah, to finish up my question, then I look at this and am I looking at it wrong? As not a money generator, but something that we are filling in a gap, basically. Is that a correct assumption then?
That's exactly right. I think as you watch me over this last several years trying to bring our community forward and the need to be able to keep our homes standing in this community, and we want our community to essentially, what I've talked about is change a culture to it's no longer about I can do what I want and I don't want to see my neighbors, to have that defensible space is really critical. And so we've been gradually moving forward in compliance and getting our risk reduced over the last several years. And we're at the point now where we're ready to take the next step forward to make sure that everybody understands the importance of their own responsibility. And this is one of the ways to do it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really think it's important for us to look at it that way because, the way it's proposed, we could generate $253,764 if we do this. So, but we shouldn't have that mindset because there are many people that can't afford it, low income. There's people that we don't want this to be a disincentive as well. We want people to make sure their home is protected. So that is important. I mean, that's the bulk of the revenue that we are missing in terms of what I think was in the staff report was $359,000 is the annual cost to provide all these services. So the bulk of it is the residential parcels, which we're currently not doing, right?
That's correct.
So I just want to follow a question on that. It does say that we're currently spending $359,618. We're not doing those annual inspections now. So right now we're spending $359,000 to do these other inspections, correct?
No.
No.
No. So.
so how
Minus 253.
So when you look at the list of inspections,
Mm.
this is an all-inclusive list. There are many that you see as a new fee
Yeah,
or
so those
flat
are-
fee. So those are things that we literally have not been doing
Sure.
as we should be. And so we're not collecting that revenue. We're not doing those inspections. And so this is a representative of what that would look like once we engage in that process.
But the issue here too, though, is that for some of these activities that we're currently performing,
Mhm.
we are not collecting enough revenue to cover the full cost.
That's correct.
You know, I'm just looking down the line, 40% we're covering for a fee, we're covering 55% of the actual costs, 80%, 82%, 83%, 40%. In some instances, 0%. So what would be interesting to me, and because right now the staff report reflects this $359,618,000 amount, and that's not really what's happening here. That is if we don't adopt the fee schedule, then we would actually result in the subsidy of the, you know, that additional subsidy. Right now, the fee schedule would only support 6%. So of the fees that we're collecting now, how much are we subsidizing? Do you know that? Do you know what that number is?
Well, I can tell you that
I
if,
mean, I'm
if,
just kind of doing the math of, I just, you know, having to go through and add everything up and saying, okay, the current fee is $170, the full cost is $211, so we're subsidizing that by whatever, you know.
yeah, and I don't want to stand at the dais and do fingertip math for you,
Yeah,
but
that's
but
what it-
let me give you the concept here is that ultimately the inspections that we're doing, that there are some that we are collecting the fees. As you know, the fees aren't to the 100% of what our actual time is. And there are others that we're doing that we're not collecting any fees. And that's the problem, is that we, as you know, as a municipality, need to recover the cost of us doing that business. And so I think that's the real important part of certainly the business inspections, that I would separate out the parcel discussion because it's a completely different animal. But the idea that we're not touching each one of our businesses and keeping them safe. It is a great concern for me because, as you know, we are a legacy city, and quite frankly, we have some pretty significant risks here that we want to make sure that we keep our community safe.
Okay, and I think we can, and there is a column here that talks about annual subsidy, so it's just a matter of taking a look and, you know, going through the existing fees versus the new fee and pulling that out. I'll have to do that tonight for meddlers tomorrow morning, so I'll be doing that fingertip math.
Okay.
Okay,
ahead.
yes, I thought you were done. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, just one last kind of statement question. So coming out of once you have your public town hall meetings and you hear from the public, I mean, theoretically, even if we adopt this fee schedule, which shows that the parcel inspection would be $211 every 3 years. It could coming out of this process, it could be zero then. It could be you decide that, well, wait, maybe the public doesn't want to do this right now, or it's just for parcels that, you know, are call, or, I mean, is that a potential?
Absolutely. I think what's important is what our end game is. Our end game is to get everybody to do their defensible space as required. However we get that done, that's what's important to me. This is, we brought this forward at the same time that we did the business inspections because I didn't have an answer to how much it would cost to do that parcel inspection. So it was really important to have that number. So at least we have a starting place to have the discussion with our community. And to your point, right, there are people that probably can't afford it. There are people that have challenges for whatever reason. And that's really important to know and understand. But we had to have a starting place.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Madam Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So that there's not the appearance that we're making money off the deal and things like that. Is there a possibility that we could take the whatever we make, probably not 253 after waivers and things like that, and put them into an account that then we could use to help do some mitigation for low income folks and things like that. So it could be its own kind of pool of money that makes sure it stays in the community versus getting put in the general fund. Cause I know people are concerned about money that's being used for a particular purpose being put back in and not being able to trace where it went. I would think it would be important to, if we're going to collect these fees for that purpose, that they would be allocated back to that purpose.
Well, and I think that's going to become a policy decision for
Yeah.
you as a body to say,
But
that-
there's nothing on these fees saying we can't do that.
Yes,
They're not
what
allocated
we
for a
can
particular
do is
purpose.
establish just a fund within the funding, the general fund. It just says this is where these fees will be deposited.
Okay.
So, and our city manager gave me the nod that's
That's okay.
absolutely
I do.
something
Okay, I
that-
just wanted, because there is that optics of that piece, and I just want to make sure that there's an opportunity if we want to make sure that we're tracking that and knowing where it all goes.
Right. So right now you don't have specific financial management policies, which we will be bringing forward as part of the budget process this year. And one of the recommendations is to create reserve accounts for specific things. This could become one of those accounts.
Mhm. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I have another idea. I'll tell you later. All right, yeah, not on tonight's agenda for sure. Councilman Holmes, did you have any other questions?
No, I don't.
All right, so again, I think it's important just to separate here that this is just the fee schedule. That you can go ahead, the only one that really you won't be able to implement is the residential parcel inspection fee, because we do have to have the author enabling ordinance that establishes the authority for that. But if we adopt the schedule tonight, it would go into effect 60 days later, and then you would be able to then, the fees would be adjusted based on the schedule, so increased or decreased, dependent upon the schedule itself. So, there will be some new, like a proposed new flat fee for fire pump system inspection, fire stand, pipe system, and so forth. So those would go into effect 60 days. And again, that's construction and business as well. So I appreciate that. Make sure I get our little flow chart correct here for this public hearing so that we don't have to reconduct this. So we've had an opportunity to ask our questions. We've had public comment. I would just like to say again, I really appreciate the fact that you've brought this to us, that you've had the study done to show us how we are, where we are with regards to our fee collection and our assessment and our recovery. I think it is important that we do recover our actual costs, that we don't recover more. I appreciate that they looked at the actual wages of the individuals that are conducting the business to determine what that actual cost is. They really dug in very deep to make sure that they are being accurate with that fee charge. So the other thing that they do recommend is that we establish a COLA, and that we take a look at this fee schedule on a regular basis to make sure that we are consistent. One thing I would like to suggest is that for that $211 fee, which would be for the residential parcel inspection, what I'd like to do is to encourage the council to say up to $211. That way it gives us the flexibility to lower that when we talk about the enabling ordinance. Otherwise, it's just set at $211. So then we don't have to go back and amend the fee schedule. So would there be any objection to incorporating that recommendation, Mr. Holmes?
No.
Okay. All right. So that would be my recommendation on that, just on that particular one. And again, the devil will be in the details when we talk about the enabling ordinance. Are there any further comments or yes, Madam Amar?
Yes, and I agree 100% with that. And I just do want to make it clear that this is not a moneymaker. This is to go out, fill in our gaps so that we can do a very good, productive job of making sure that our town is safe. And that, I am very concerned that people look at this as a tax, and it's not a tax. And because we're going to be flexible and it's not going to be discretionary, we're going to have the workshop and people will make, have very bright lines as to where, when, and how, and who's exempt. And hopefully we have it with the right frame of mind, which is we want to encourage people to cooperate and to really protect their homes and the homes around them. So I would definitely agree with up to
Up to
211.
211. Yeah, I just want to build in that flexibility for us when we talk about the ordinance
Yeah.
itself. The other thing I just want to pose before the council, the recommendations of the consultant, again, is that we incorporate a CPI or COLA, which they encourage on an annual basis, and that we also take a look at this, at least every 3, but not more than every 5 years. Is there interest in the council in adopting a COLA with these fees so that they will automatically go up, or would you prefer not to have the COLA in there?
I'd prefer not to.
I don't think so.
Okay, good. What I would recommend, though, is that with the fee schedule, that we direct staff to conduct another analysis in 5 years. I think
That'd be
3 years
fine.
is too soon.
I do too.
I think 5 years, then we can adjust them as necessary.
Yes.
Would everybody be, is there any objection to that?
No.
Since they're based on our salaries, I would say if there's any major adjustment to our salaries, we should also take a look at them. Just because there are possibilities of, especially with the economy right now, of major adjustments with salaries. And if it's based on the salary of our workers and that goes up by 20% or something weird, I'm not saying it will, but just the economy is kind of strange. I just want to make sure that we're not under collecting and we can't go back and look at it again for 5 years. So
Then
just
that
what-
could be next year though.
Yeah.
I'm just, but that's what I'm saying. I don't want to be under collecting again
Yeah.
right away because
that's-
our salary schedules
So
change.
that's why the consultant suggested that we build in a COLA, that the COLA increase, it would really be the CPI or COLA factor based on the Bureau of Labor statistics. So that would, as our labor costs increase, then the fees would also increase. I personally would prefer, especially since we haven't taken a look at these fees in more than 20 years. I would like to take a look. I think Councilwoman Amara was along the same lines of taking a look in 5 years and then adjusting it as necessary. I do want to ensure that we cover our costs, but I am concerned that we've got there's quite a few new fees on here as well. And some of these things we're only doing 1 time or 2 times. And so
If we're not going to do the COLA, I'd like to do 3 years because I think that we, at least for the first time, so we can check those new fees and things. I'd hate to be
How
really
about 4
behind on our
years?
fees.
Well, you say 3, 5, so we'll
All
do
right.
4 years work for everybody.
Do we have the capacity though, if we find that they're that they're off, that we can bring those back?
There's
You can always bring.
Okay, I'm just saying, we should
Absolutely.
definitely look at them if something becomes.
There's always the opportunity, the council can always, 2 members can ask that an item be scheduled on the agenda. So if we feel like there's been some kind of crazy thing happen, then we can always bring it back. We absolutely have that authority.
Great, thank you.
So with that said, because I've made several suggestions here, I'd like to take the liberty of making a motion, council
And-
members. Would that be acceptable? Generally, mayor doesn't do that.
And mayor and council.
Yes.
Before the motion is made, section 5 of the resolution as currently drafted before you does have the CPI in it. So if
Okay.
the council's desire is to remove that in the automatic CPI, then section 5 of the resolution should be removed before adoption.
Okay, that's section 5. Okay.
Getting a little rowdy.
All right. Okay. All right. So with that said, I'd like to move the adoption of the fee schedule as outlined in this resolution, or let's see here. Yes, okay, let me start that over. I move to adopt the resolution adopting the fire inspection service fees as proposed with the following modifications. Number 1, to remove item 5 from the resolution with regards to COLA and CPI. Number 2, to establish the residential parcel inspection fee up to $211. And number 3, to direct staff to conduct an additional another study in 4 years.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Holmes?
Well, I do have another question,
Oh, please go ahead.
and I'm wondering if this is fully adopted, what impact this might have on homeowners insurance? Whether homeowners insurance may be reduced by the insurance companies because of these fees and normal inspections and that sort of thing. Is there any thought to how that might be affected?
Yeah, the fire service and the insurance industry are really in alignment on this issue, trying to come together, both with hard data based on testing of Embercast and the actual impact of fuel reduction and defensible space. And so currently the insurance company is behind in updating how they allocate their insurance. But as we continue to move forward in this space, I think you will see that come in line with the things that we are doing or what we're proposing to do with these parcel inspections will most certainly assist the insurance industry because we're reducing the risk by dramatically.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as all of us know, there've been a number in this region, a lot of people have lost their fire insurance for their residents because of the threat of fire. So
Could we provide some kind of certificate or something for people who have passed their fire inspections so that they can try to get a deduction from their insurance?
Absolutely.
And again, I just want to remind the council that all of these details, very important. This is going to be part of the overall discussion when we talk about the ordinance. I mean, there's going to be, I've got a whole host of questions there and I'm going to reserve those until we have that opportunity. So again, this fee schedule is what we have before us. And it's very clear before we take the vote that residential partial inspection fee, if it is established tonight, it cannot be implemented until that ordinance has been adopted. So just very clear on that point. All right. Any further comments at this time on the motion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Amara.
Yes.
Holmes.
I,
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye. Let the record show that motion has been adopted 4-0. Thank you, Chief, and we'll look forward to hearing your schedule for those town hall meetings. All right, next item on the agenda. We have the information about proposed transportation master plan elements.
Our, excuse me, our engineer, Alan Mitchell, will do the initial staff report.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you tonight?
Good.
I'm Alan Mitchell. I'm your city engineer and pleased to be here in front of you tonight. Let's talk a little bit about transportation planning, shall we? The city's general plan was adopted in '93, as you know, and it contains a circulation element. The circulation element provides a roadmap for infrastructure planning for existing and proposed facilities related to transportation. The element has not been updated since 1993 and no other circulation master plan has been developed since then. In April 2002, Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, PCTPA, prepared a City of Auburn Bike Master Plan, which developed a citywide bikeway network that coordinates with the regional plan and complies with the California Bicycle Transportation Act. The bicycle plan has not been updated since 2002. In 2022, the strategic plan included an objective under land use policy to update the key city master plans. Tonight, the transportation master plan is the first one we'll bring before you, and with future discussions about possibly sewer and drainage master plans as well. In December of 2022, the city executed an on-call agreement with Farron Piers. They're a Sacramento-based transportation planning and engineering services firm that is longstanding relationships in the Sacramento area with Placer County, the city of Auburn, and they have worked closely with various transportation planning agencies, PCTPA, SACOG, Caltrans, et cetera. Staff met with them and discussed the city's desire to develop transportation master plans for overall circulation, ped and bike, and traffic safety. From that discussion, they prepared a draft scope of work, which is before you tonight, which includes the following tasks: data collection, roadway master plan, local roadway safety plan, and active transportation plan. Two representatives are here tonight, Ron and Rob. Ron and Rob, you got that? And they'll go through each task in detail. And what we're asking tonight is that council ask questions so that we can refine that scope. And that will be the basis for future task orders under their on-call agreement. After the presentation, the challenge with these master plans is how do we pay for them? So we're going to look, we have some ideas, and we're going to have to chase some money. And after the presentation and your questions, we can address some of our ideas of what we've seen out there, what we've used in the past in other agencies. and give you an idea of what we're going to be chasing. So with that, Rob and Ron, please come forward.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. Ron Milam with Fair and Pierce. It's a real pleasure to be here with you tonight. I am the author of the original Auburn General Plan Circulation Element back in 1993.
Wow.
So it's a unique opportunity to be able to come back this many years later to potentially perform an update. Also, Auburn, longtime Auburn resident, grew up here, went to Placer High School, all those kinds of fun things. So glad to be back.
Together. No.
Yes, you're ahead of me, Alice.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, small world.
A small world, right? You look familiar.
Yeah, so in terms of tonight's presentation, we basically want to just give you some highlights. If we can get the clicker to advance the slides. Oh, there we go. So there's a framework here in terms of our general approach and the way we like to think about plans, especially for a city like Auburn. Long historic aspects to the town. And so one of the fundamental questions we oftentimes want to ask is, what does the city want to protect or preserve when they think about updating a plan like this? This is a plan for your transportation network for all elements, how it operates, the safety, dealing with all the different modes of travel in the city. So these are some fundamental questions for you to think about. These are really representations of your community values. Second question is, what does the city want to avoid or minimize? As growth continues to occur, the world around you changes. What are you trying to avoid as all that happens and those things that are within your control? And then what does the city want to create? You're basically in control of the transportation network that you own and operate and maintain. And what are you trying to do with that network in terms of how it serves the local residents, the schools, the businesses, the visitors? Those are all fundamental questions that we try to answer as we go through these master plan processes. Well, do you want to pause for a moment? Okay. You can go ahead and go to the next slide when you're ready.
Lost your connection with the server.
You just wanted to serenade us with a little bit of music to go along with the slide deck. That's all.
There we go. Okay. So we do have three different master plans identified. The first one, the circulation master plan, is really the circulation element of the general plan. The second one, an active transportation plan, does cover walking and bicycling. And then the local road safety plan is specific to those local roads you operate and own, and looking specifically at collision history and collision risk and trying to minimize future collisions. Let's go to the next slide. So in terms of circulation master plan, what is it? Why prepare one? When you think about general plans in planning lingo, we like to refer to them as the constitution for your city. They're where your community values get expressed as goals and policies, and you actually identify physical improvements to the transportation network to accommodate the growth that you anticipate. As part of that, when you make decisions regarding land use proposals or transportation proposals in the future, the intent is those proposals need to be consistent with that plan. It really drives those future decisions. It is comprehensive. It does cover all the transportation modes. That means walking, bicycling, transit, and driving. It does provide a vision or an expected outcome in terms of what things will look like in the future. These are typically 20-year plans. The last plan was intended to last through 2012. I'm not sure how I feel about it lasting all the way to 2023. I guess that's an indication that it did have that kind of community value base. I think Auburn hasn't changed a whole lot over that time period. It also does help you identify and prioritize the transportation investments. And that's really what you think about in terms of transportation network you own and operate today. It is an asset. It provides accessibility to your businesses, to your schools, to your parks. And so, the intent here is to provide some expectations for how you want to modify that. What kind of state of good repair do you want to maintain? Those are all fundamental questions that we like to ask. There are regulatory requirements, all kinds of government code sections here that govern this. There are requirements that have passed in state law since 1993. There was a change in 2011 where you're supposed to include a complete streets policy. There were other changes in 2016 for environmental justice. And in 2025, there's another requirement coming up with regards to safe systems approach to analyzing safety, trying to anticipate collision risk instead of waiting for the collisions to happen. So those are all requirements that have happened since the last plan was updated. Now, in terms of the active transportation plan, this again is for walking and bicycling, and the idea is to identify on a map where all these facilities need to connect. It is one of the unique plans where you have to have one to qualify for State Transportation Act, basically funding. So we do look at a lot of communities wanting to prepare these plans because it's the gateway, if you will, to get to those state dollars from the Bicycle Transportation Act. It is useful also in terms of doing it at the same time as the general plan, because you're sharing all the same data in terms of what's on the ground today and what you're trying to plan for. So there's a certain synergy of doing this plan at the same time as the circulation element. Let's go to the next slide. Local road safety plan, same thing. It's required to qualify for the Highway Safety Improvement Program funding. What we're doing here is looking specifically at collisions, though, and where you might have collision issues today. With try to identify potential hotspots that could be remedied through crash modification factors or road design changes or even traffic control changes. This plan also can look at collision risk. Sometimes you don't have to have collisions out there to know that there's a potential for problems. So to extent we can go through a process and identify those and identify remedies, that's the goal. So again, doing these plans all at the same time, they share so much in common in terms of the basic data. That's one of the key things here, picking off each of these at the same time if you can. That's always ideal. Sometimes funding does not allow for that. But to the extent that you have that capability, you definitely save yourselves costs in the long run. With that, we'll take any questions you have regarding the plans and how we propose to approach them.
I'm going to start over here. Councilman Holmes, do you have any questions?
Yes, I've got one question about what is HSIP?
That's that Highway Safety Improvement Program. So basically to qualify for state and federal grant dollars to improve the safety of your local road system.
And what's the process of getting a grant for that?
So you have to have a qualifying plan first. That's step one.
Yeah.
Once you have that, you tend to have different locations that are identified needing different treatments. So you might choose to pursue just an individual project at an isolated location, or sometimes you might treat a series of locations if they have some connectedness.
Okay, well, I see a lot about bicycles and pedestrians. And there are a number of people in Auburn that are wheelchair bound or have electric chairs that they take around town, and they have problems with sidewalks because there's no ramps. And would this be part of the effort to adjust that so that they don't have to be in the roadway if they're in an electric vehicle?
Yeah, so
Sidewalk improvements and ADA
Yeah.
access is what I think the councilman's asking, if this would cover that.
yeah, it can cover that. Think of it in different layers. So when you think of active transportation, that's not just walking and bicycling. That could be scootering. It can include wheelchairs or any other devices that you need to move. And so when you think about what that active transportation network looks like, a lot of it does involve the sidewalks, the crossings at the intersections, in particular the ramps. You may have seen some treatments in town where those have been modified to accommodate like a wheelchair movement or another device. And one of the things we try to do in these plans, because they are 20 years out, we do try to anticipate what's coming. There's all kinds of different personal mobility devices, PMDs, that people have anticipated, especially in an electrified world. So some of the things that you might come out of this type of plan is not to look at just the traditional sidewalks, bike lanes, and bike paths or trails, but to anticipate those things that are coming and how you want to assign the right of way. You own and control your right of way. How you want to allocate that space, whether it's for driving or bicycling or walking or scootering or any other potential use, including parking. Those are all decisions that you control through these plans.
Councilman Holmes, do you have any other questions?
Well, I was thinking about robots, but
Sidewalk delivery is one of the
I'm
items.
actually thinking of Hoovercrafts. So, we got to start establishing our right of way in this space for that.
Well,
Someday.
yeah.
Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
All the last mile transportation is big features, so that's one thing to think about. There's some places that don't allow the sharing of scooters and bikes because they're lying around. There's all kinds of interesting things happening around transportation, especially non-car transportation. Thank you for the presentation.
Sure.
How do you think that the new EV/ZEV world impacts this more than it did even? Sorry.
Yeah.
How do you think that the EV or ZEV world impacts these plans more than it did 5 years ago? Are things different? Do you have to look at things differently, especially around parking and charging type of things? Is there anything that gets thought about when it comes to these kinds of plans?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. The biggest one right now has been the charging infrastructure. It's one thing for people to be able to charge in their homes and install their own charging equipment. It's another thing to provide for the public spaces and what you might want to do at businesses, multifamily type units, apartments, where it may not be as convenient for everyone to just install a charger. So that's been one of the bigger questions. How accommodative do you want to be to facilitate the electrification of the network? That's one broad question. And then do you want to be so specific as to identify those charging locations in something like your circulation element and make a commitment to preserve right of way for them, or even go so far as to fund and construct them and operate them? So you have a lot of new choices that you didn't have before because of that electrification. There's one big policy question that's emerged also in places like Old Town and downtown, where you do have businesses that have a lot of people walking and even bicycling in and out of them. To what extent do you want to accommodate that balance between the modes? Electrification of vehicles it's becoming a bit of a tipping point where some cities have decided to be very accommodative, and in those cases they're not as concerned about the pedestrians or the bicyclists. They're trying to make sure they have charging and they have plenty of parking spaces. They really want to accommodate that continued driving mode. There's other cities that are basically looking at through multiple lenses and saying, well, do we want to continue focusing on driving, or do we want to make provisions for all the other modes and the way that people access these businesses? So in different types of settings, they may set different expectations. And so they treat an Old Town or a downtown very differently than you would like North Auburn.
So will you give us recommendations if you see something that might be good for a change like that, that might be a good opportunity for us to look at something that's different than the way we've always done it?
Yeah, the idea for what we do, because we are looking so far forward, we tend to look 20 years. That's the typical recommendations for general plans, but we'll take it a little stretch further, see if there's anything that's emerging that might make sense. We look at two kinds of things: disruptive trends and emerging trends. Those emerging trends are things you go, oh, wow, that would be great if it shows up. Disruptive trends are like, that looks like it may show up. What are we going to do about it? So all these things create opportunities. Charging, for example, it could be a cost, it could be an investment if you are charging the customers. I mean, a lot of these things work both ways. Parking spaces, you could store cars there. You could also generate revenue if you rented them out for, a food truck. So some of those are the policies that, are being brought forth today to think about that we didn't think about back in 1993.
Okay. Is the airport included in the scope?
In terms of the airport, it is part of the land use plan, and the land use plan, any growth there has a connection to the circulation element, because what we're trying to do is size your infrastructure to accommodate the growth plans. So it has a natural connection to the airport. And so, yes, for circulation purposes, it would be included. Our plan does not propose to include any land use changes or anything like that. So we'd be focused just on the
It's an island, so it
circulation.
doesn't tend to get put in plans as much, but it's got some transportation things that might be interested in.
Yeah, and if you look at the current general plan, you'll see the little island there in the graphics, and it does identify the land use element, and for circulation, it's also identified.
Okay, great. And
We
I got
won't
one-
forget our airport.
Well, yeah, it's kind of because it is a multimodal in its own way kind of space. It's kind of interesting, and it's got a lot of industrial, so it's kind of got some interesting things going on there.
Yes.
And then the last question I had was, as far as bicycle routes and alternative routes, do you just kind of look at adding them to where they already are, or do you kind of look at, are there places that we could have them like maybe going different routes or alternate back smaller street routes to get to places and things like that? Because I know that not everyone wants to ride on Auburn Folsom, but everyone talks about putting a bike lane on Auburn Folsom. And so, but there might be a different way using other kind of off the beaten path ways of getting around.
Yeah, when you think of bicycle users, what we try to do is look at what's called the low stress network. What we're trying to do is accommodate all the different users, everything from the 8-year-old to.
I
you
like low stress for everything.
Yeah.
Well, okay, yes.
Cars too would be good.
Yeah, everyone nobody needs stress. So the idea though is to accommodate different user types. Those that are comfortable, prefer to be on a path versus those that are, comfortable being in a bike lane right next to the cars, at relatively moderate speeds. So you do try to accommodate all the different user types, and you have different facility treatments. So you could have a bike lane, you could have what's called a buffered bike lane where there's some protection between the vehicles and the bike lane, or going to a complete off-street path, which you tend to have the lowest level of stress. So those are all different options that we do consider. And we also have new data that we didn't have back in, the 90s. So we have a lot of the big data sources, mobile device data. So we actually know more about where people are actually going, and we can actually look at how many people are bicycling or walking today to different destinations and look at, are there facilities for them? Are they making the trip on a facility that doesn't accommodate them well today? And should you put it there? Because now we have better information to inform you, people are making this trip.
Okay, sorry, I have one more quick question. When it comes to, since our city is centered around kind of two major highway freeways, how does that come into our transportation planning? Because we don't have any control over those necessarily, but we get a lot of things that happen around those, or our transportation is kind of dictated by those in some ways.
Yeah, so Caltrans is a partner, and they do provide the backbone for the major roadways, being I-80 and 49 going through town. And so in most general plan updates, that's when Caltrans actually has a group called Local Development Review. They engage with you directly and want to partner with you to understand what are your needs, what are their needs. They do have intercity responsibility, and they want to make sure that's provided for, but they're also context sensitive. They want to make sure that what they're doing to facilitate that intercity is not completely against whatever you're trying to do with your objectives to accommodate more local travel. So they can engage in the process, and they'll bring their own ideas and suggestions. And you really do want to engage them in that as a partner, because they also have their own investments that they'll want to make to the transportation network, working with you in that context.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilwoman Amara, do you have
Thank you.
questions?
Yes, I do. First of all, this is very exciting. This is probably one of the funnest things we'll be doing on city council, I think. So my question is, I think you alluded, we have a lot of plans. So will you be utilizing some of those plans, like the old bike plan of 2020 or 2012, I think?
22,000, right?
2002.
Yes.
Yeah, so old plans are useful plans. I don't like to ever throw a plan away and not reflect on it. And I can tell you, one of the very unique things about your current general plan that almost no other jurisdiction has followed is we had a stakeholder advisory committee that put that plan together. And instead of us taking a land use plan and doing a bunch of growth projections, then modeling it to tell you how big the roads need to be, we had a stakeholder advisory committee that told us, here's the road sizes we want. Do not widen these roads. Leave them at the current sizes, and we'll accommodate only as much growth that can fit within the size of these roads. Very unique approach. And so to the extent that the community still values those road sizes where they sit today that were set back in 1993, that could remain. That could be some people would look at it as a constraint. I would look at it as a specification to the plan to say, look, we don't want to put growth in places that would cause us to have to expand these intersections or these roadways. And that was the way they did it last time. You could choose to do it again this time, or knowing that that's how they did it last time, you could remove that constraint and say, no, they constrain the growth too much. We'd like to see growth in this area, and therefore we're willing to accommodate the bigger roadways to facilitate that.
So, I mean, I get, and you look at the big picture, you look at, cost is a big thing, but you'll come back and, that won't be an issue for you. That's something for us to figure out. In other words, like there's certain places that roundabouts would be wonderful, but I know those are very costly. Is that something you'll look into as well?
You can look to see, are there locations where a roundabout versus a traffic signal may be needed in the future? That's one of the questions you can ask. So if you have specific questions like that and specific locations already in mind, that's what's most useful to our scope. Do you have 10 of these locations you want looked at? Do you just have 2 or 3? that can affect our scope in terms of how much analysis we actually need to conduct.
So I guess that leads to my next question. What is your process? Do you want us to give you input? I have a lot of ideas. Or do you go to the community, or what is your process?
Yeah, the
And are
process
you
right
here
now is
tonight to hear our
Yeah.
vision, or is it more just you're telling us your process?
Yeah, we've given you a scope of work that outlines the most standard process. Basically, this is what you typically do. You collect data in terms of what's on the ground today for all the different modes, and that includes safety, what collisions are occurring, and where do we might have some issues. We then go through a process to look at the growth, the forecasted growth in population and employment. Usually we're working with agencies like SACOG and PCTPA to obtain that data. We do run it through an analytical process, and we look out to year 2040, 2045, and can give you a forecast of here's how the world's going to change over the next 20 years. And then you tell us, well, given all that growth and where they all want to go, what types of facilities do you want to put in place to serve them? Widen the roads, expand the bikeways, provide more transit. That's the type of input you used as you go through the process. Right now, we've got a basic scope that does those steps, but you can add lots of details if you have more specific questions about any given location, a growth area, any particular roadway or transit line. Any of those specific questions you have that you'd like to make sure we're answering your question, we can
Okay.
modify the scope accordingly.
Okay, because we do have we have a lot of folks who really want to be able to have Auburn people come to Auburn to access the canyon on bicycles or hiking. And there's also people that come from out of town to Auburn. So, I think there's a lot of opportunity here. And I think
Let me give you one that might interest you, given how many out of towners come to visit such a great town and great place to do all kinds of recreational things. So there's a location in Southern California city where one of the things they considered is they need to generate more revenue to make improvements and enhancements in their visitor areas. This include their downtown. And what they want to know is, what if we charged more for parking in this downtown? Who would pay it? Their presumption was it would be the visitors versus local residents. That's something they were sensitive to. Because we have mobile device data, we can tell you, how many people are coming into particular areas of the city and where they're coming from. So if you want to know how many visitors on the weekends are showing up here, or what percent of the total trips in and out of downtown or Old Town are locals versus visitors that do not reside here, that's all information we have access to. And so it can help you answer questions. If 80% of the people who are coming into this area are from out of town and you want to charge a parking fee for them to help pay for some of the amenities that you'd like to support them with, you have that information at your disposal. So those kinds of questions, you can dig really deep into more of the, not just policy questions, but operational questions about how the network's going to perform.
You're going to have lots of data. You're going to have lots of fun data.
But I wasn't necessarily meaning to charge people to get money from people coming in, just to attract people to come in to help our businesses and want to be here. And the active transportation plan is exciting to learn about. But finally, the last question is, you talked a little bit about bike lanes and the different types. So you'll be coming back with maybe the different roads and what is the best, safest kind of bike lane we could have? Is that the idea?
Yeah, it's more of a combination of, when you think of origins and destinations for bicyclists, schools, parks, businesses, you want different people, different abilities to be able to get there with that low stress, network. And so, yes, you may put a bike lane on the most direct route that uses the roadways, but you're going to look for at least one option that would be maybe a parallel facility on a lower volume road or a lower speed road, or maybe there's a trail option so that they don't even have to mix with vehicle traffic. So you don't want to just provide bike lanes only and force people onto the bike lanes riding right next to the vehicles. Too many different user sets to think about in terms of what they're comfortable with.
Okay, and then finally, last question. You asked about the airport, but you'll be doing, it will encompass even South Auburn. You'll be doing the whole city.
Yeah, if you look at the last circulation element, went to South Auburn, included, Bell Road, 49 all the way out. I think we went as far as Dry Creek. I mean, the actual planning area is much larger than the city limits last time, whether you want to maintain that or shrink that at all. There was a lot of debate last time between the county and the city in terms of, what happened in North Auburn in particular, and Mount Vernon, Edgewood, Atwood, all those roads were in discussion at that time. And so they were included in the analysis. Whether you want to go that far out this time or you want to stay a little more focused within the city limits, those are all choices.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that data is helpful though, because so many of those cars are coming into the city. So just, out from North Auburn, so that is important.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about this. I mean, you've got a whole, I read through your plan here, your various means of data collection and the stakeholder groups that you'll be convening for the purposes of getting additional input. Sounds really exciting. I think you mentioned that you'll be coordinating with SACOG and PCTPA as well. I know that, we've got the sidewalk, the 49er sidewalk gap closure program that's underway. And so that, that will obviously, you'll incorporate that here. I think it's important too, when we're taking a look at growth and where our numbers are from SACOG, the arena numbers and so forth, we have to take all that into consideration. It's interesting. You commented about that 1993 requirement where the streets, we said, okay, we don't want to have any more growth. I think it's actually made it difficult for us really, at this point. I'd like to see that removed to give us more flexibility, because we do have to build more housing. We know that we have to build more housing, and we need to be able to have our streets support that. And so having a restriction makes it very difficult. And I think a lot of us do like infill, and like to encourage housing downtown, but we obviously have numbers that we need to meet as mandated by the state of California. So I didn't have any specific questions, but I am very much looking forward to this process as you move forward. And I know Councilman Holmes, did you have another question?
Well, I have a recommendation. We have a number of bike lanes around Auburn, and there's one on Nevada Street that northbound that goes up to a point, and it just stops about 50 or 60 feet from the next intersection. And I brought this up with the traffic committee last time we met. And so maybe you might have some recommendations on how to redirect that, because there's just a sign there that says the bike lane stops.
Bike lane ends.
And
There were some right-of-way issues there. It's right along the old Auburn Cemetery. So the bike lane is on that side by the old Auburn Cemetery. And there were some restrictions in our ability to dig the road there because of the cemetery kind of progressed into the roadway area. I'm trying to be very delicate in this. And so it's made it very difficult, because Councilman Holmes is correct in stating it just sort of stops. But it'll be interesting to,
And-
I don't have a solution for that, but
and the
it'd be
people
interesting.
buried there don't object.
Oh, that's one there.
That's a whole nother thing. But I know that a lot of people have brought that up. It's a tough situation because we're restricted in what we can do, but I'm certainly you'll take a look at that.
Yeah, those are examples of specific locations where you want to do a little more detailed evaluation. So if you have those kinds of locations, they're great to call out.
Mhm.
And to the extent that most of those we hopefully can cover in the existing scope, but sometimes you want very detailed analysis that might require extra attention.
It would be good just to because we get this question and this comment a lot. And so it would be good just to have a response. If there's a way that we can address that or not, and then put it to bed, because it is kind of floating out there. And I know that all of us have heard that many times. And it's a new thing because the improvements to Nevada Street just were completed a couple of years ago. And so but we've been hearing about it since it was completed.
Sure.
Councilman Holmes, do you have any other questions?
No, that's it.
Oh,
That's it.
good.
I have one.
Yes, Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
And I imagine you'll do that. You'll look at that intersection anyway, because it's right next to the railroad station. So that's going to be a big multimodal kind
That's
of
yeah.
place anyway. I don't remember, it might have been in there. What's the schedule like for this and how long do you think it'll take to complete the scope of work that you were looking at doing?
Yeah, it depends on whether or not they all go at the same time or do they get spread out because of funding.
Mhm.
In a typical general plan update, and doing two other master plans at the same time, the shortest schedule tends to be no less than about 12 months. More realistically, they're 18 months.
Yeah.
And that's presuming everything goes well and your stakeholder committees get along. If they have very differing opinions and those kinds of things, it can drag out a little bit longer than that. But that's pretty typical.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks. And you'll keep us apprised, and it would be good, because I know Councilwoman Amara, that this is an issue that you're very passionate about. You may even want to participate in the stakeholder group.
Yes, yeah.
And so if you could just, maybe keep us apprised or staff keep us apprised of when those stakeholder groups will be meeting. That way, if there are folks, we can also
Yeah.
steer them to those or what have you.
Yeah, and that's a good question in terms of the council and planning commission. I think last time we had what they called a 2-on-2, so two council members, two planning commissioners that sat in on those stakeholder committee
Yeah,
meetings.
I think that'd be a great idea that we can have. I'm sure that you'd like to do that.
Yeah, I'd love to.
And then who is our is it Councilman Berlant is our
Traffic, I believe.
he's on the traffic committee. I was just thinking that he might be the other.
Yeah.
We'll ask him.
Okay.
Is there a downside to us noticing them so we can all go? I feel like it wouldn't be bad if all of us could attend and see what they're like and make, I mean, it wouldn't hurt anything if we just noticed them. So that way we could all go if we wanted to.
We could certainly do that. I mean, and the fact of the matter is that we're not making a decision. It's just we're providing some input or what have you. So. Okay, good. Is there any public comment on this item? Madam Clerk, is there any online public comment for this item? Okay, great. Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Yeah,
Good to
thank
see
you.
again.
So let's talk about funding. So the
Yeah.
master plans cost money. And the city has some money currently budgeted for general plan update / circulation / so there's some opportunity to use that money to get us started. The first order of business is the data collection. That's going to be the basis for tearing off for the master plans. There are grants out there through the feds and through state, but it takes time and money to apply for those. They're very competitive, but there are transportation planning grants available. We've identified some. There'll be more with each passing month and year. We do not anticipate that we're going to have enough funding to hit this all at once. So it's going to be drawn out for a few or several years, unfortunately, unless we can identify a lump sum of cash somewhere. So
What kind of costs are we looking at?
we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, up to 500,000 possibly, for all 4 tasks.
And I know that you said that you're going to be talking to SACOG, but I know that I'll be meeting with the SACOG executive director in Auburn, and it might behoove us to have some additional info. Let's talk offline maybe
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, if any of you hear of anything, if you have contacts, definitely we need to use those. Obviously, Fair and Peers is well networked in the area.
Well, there
so-
could be some Caltrans ARPA money or something. I don't know if there's,
Yeah.
Caltrans ARPA money that's available for this kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah. So one thing I just want you to understand is, and you nodded your head, that sometimes it takes money to get money, right? So sometimes we need the assistance of consultants that really go after these types of grants, and there's data that needs to be provided, analysis. And so some of the funding that's been approved through their on-call agreement, we may work with them to go after some of these grants. So as we do that, we'll come back to you and give you the good news if we obtain some. Some of the grants may take a year to come to fruition, but I just want to let you know, we're going to make the plan, we're going to chase the money, and then we're going to get it done. So how we do that is yet to be seen, but we'll keep you abreast of our progress.
Just again, to go back on the fiscal, I'm pretty sure that we designated some ARPA money for the circulation element. Did we do that? We need to, and I don't know if there's any, because some of this is going to be incorporated into the circulation elements. I don't know if there's opportunity to use some of those.
I don't recall if there was a specific amount identified. I mentioned to you earlier when we talked that we are putting together a schedule of what
Mhm.
was previously allocated to ARPA monies to bring to you in the mid-year budget review, so you can evaluate that.
Thank you so much for the reminder. I appreciate that. So we can take a look at that too. But we got to chase as many dollars as we can. They are out there. There is a lot of competition, but
Yeah.
why not Auburn?
How much was in the circulation element in the budget? I
Well,
can't remember.
that's, we don't
I
remember.
don't know the.
Oh, no, I thought they meant not the ARPA money. This,
Um,
do you remember how
I
much?
think, Nathan, it was 250 was budgeted. I don't
Okay,
remember.
okay. Just wondering how close we are to our goal. And then.
Yeah, and keep in mind, that was general plan, there were other
It's a
things too,
different-
so I hate,
Okay,
This is
a
separate. It's
combination.
just that there's data that will be shared.
yeah, I hate to assume that we get all of that, right?
And
I'd
then
love
it would
that,
be
but
interesting to figure out if there's what percentage of that $500-ish thousand we could possibly get from grants, so we can start budgeting
Yeah.
the rest if we need to.
so we'll get on it. So thanks for your time.
Great. Thank you very
Appreciate it.
much.
Yeah.
All right, and I already asked for public comment, which there wasn't any. So let me get to the agenda here. Next item on the agenda will be reports. We have a city manager report. Mhm.
Oh,
Aha,
sorry.
there we can
I
hear
hit-
you now.
I'm sorry, I hit it the wrong way. It was on and I turned it off. Anyway, the other two are Thailand and Spain, and we do know that Thailand is sending a contingent to our race to learn and take things back for when they have theirs. Anyway, staff is working closely with the organizers of the event. I think it will be a tremendous opportunity for Auburn to continue to put out the great things that are happening here that I'm not sure that we focus on enough on an individual basis and really let people know what we have going on here and to come.
Are we putting out any kind of press release, stuff online, just so that way that information is getting out? to the public?
There will be, the promoters have a PR group, and when we met with them last, I emphasized that.
Yeah.
We really want that information.
And
out.
making sure that we talk to our downtown businesses as well. I know there's a huge social media presence right now about canyons. It's just all over social media.
Mhm.
But also just making sure that we're working with Downtown Business Association and that our business owners, again, this is the second time we're doing this. So at least they are aware and many of them that might have been a little bit weary. So, they really recognize the significance. They had a lot of business that came in. So
So it might be good to, I know that in your social media world I haven't seen anything.
Oh, okay.
So because you do more of the endurance stuff, I'm sure it's I just have not seen anything on
Oh,
social media. So we need to make sure we're reaching out to maybe putting stuff out through police or places that aren't necessarily endurance things so that way
City
people,
Hall, maybe.
people know that it's coming to town. So they're not trying to get stuck in traffic and all that kind of
Yes,
stuff.
and we did talk about that, and that will happen. The other thing that we encouraged them to be very attentive to is talking with businesses and the number of people that will come in, particularly restaurants and those that offer some type of supply, so that they don't run out of food. There will be more people this year than there were last year. It's
How many thousands of people are they thinking? What did they say?
I don't recall that they had a number in the thousands, but
Can't remember last year's number.
yeah.
But,
it'll
and
be-
even
yeah.
encouraging the businesses to open early. I know that Councilwoman Amara and I were here very early that day, and there were a couple of businesses that were smart and opened up super early, like at 4 a.m.
Mhm.
And people were there. We were having coffee.
For a warm cup of coffee.
That's right. So-
Well, they are very focused on that.
Mhm.
And then the last thing I will say about that, when we met last, we already had 32 countries represented in participation.
Exciting, very
Yes.
exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, City Council Committee reports. Councilman Holmes?
I don't have anything to report.
Councilwoman Amara?
Yes. So a couple things, School Park Preserve, pickleball, outdoor venue down there, right down there, is coming along. ARD has already brought it to their board. I talked with our city manager. We're going to bring it forward in terms of more information and for our portion with regard to the cost of putting in the improvements down there. I do want to say it was initially ARD is doing a lot of the legwork and they've been putting a lot of time. We pared it down so that it's not as much as we thought it would be, but it's going to be divided among 3 different entities. So what an opportunity again for our land to be improved with the money of other entities and working collaboratively.
Just a question on that, Madam Council Member. So is there the expectation that the city will come up with some funds to help the development of the pickleball courts?
Yes,
Okay.
there is, yes.
So what I would encourage is, if this isn't already happening, but that get put into the budget building process. We want to make sure that when, we, because right now we have no funds allocated for that. So we want to make sure that that's in the discussion.
Yeah, the city manager and I already discussed that.
Okay.
Yeah, but sooner than later, we have to bring it forward so that we can keep moving, so they can keep moving forward. Otherwise, it just won't happen. But again, ARD is on board, and then there's the nonprofit.
Is it the trust?
Yeah, the trust. It was Immigrant Trust. It's Skyview. So some of the improvements which will come later. There's already been a lot of community support. They're willing to help with like lighting, fencing, and a lot of the other improvements. So this is just a real community effort. And we're the beneficiary. It's our land. But and also the other thing I think I've said before, and I want to reiterate, Chief Canan and I have been talking, it would be of extreme value for us to have that utilized so that the vandalism and the crime or small criminal things that are happening down at the park will be curtailed, we're hoping. So anyway, that's all I have to report on that. Then the other one is the Sustainability Committee met, and they're continuing to work on many projects. One thing is the City Hall lawn. I talked about that, and that's for the drought, for water conserving water for our front, just like we did at this fire station. So that will come before us at hopefully the end of March, because the gentleman that
March
wants to.
27th agenda. And,
Yes.
And staff will be.
Yeah.
providing comments.
And then I talked about this before. There's a young lady who attended our meeting, and she's very enthusiastic, and I've been working with Menjel on the a bike lane. And so that's something that's just still on the radar. Looking at all the projects that they have, the form-based code, of course, they're very supportive. And the restaurant reduction program in terms of plastic and composting is ongoing. The Sustainability Committee, including myself, just met with the Placer People of Faith, and they want to get on board. All the churches want to get on board with regard to supporting, going around to businesses and restaurants to encourage and educate them as far as the benefits of composting, and also using non-plastics, non-styrofoam for takeout. And that's been real successful. Sustainability had a grassroots group that was doing a lot of the business reaching to the businesses, but that's been proven to be very time consuming. So Placer People of Faith, again, heard about it, want to help out. They have a very large contingent. They also have some funds. So anyway, more to come with that. And that is all oh, and the Downtown Business Association has a general meeting. That is
Oh, yeah.
Wednesday night, I believe. Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. And I give you the exact. But it is a general meeting. Anybody that wants to attend. It is, oh, excuse me, it's tomorrow night, 6 o'clock. And
The 28th.
yeah,
It's
that's what I have in my
February
calendar, the
28th.
28th. Yes.
Where is it?
Oh, you would ask that. I didn't put it down, but I believe it is, where'd Jackie go? It's this time wait, hold on, I'm getting a text. Oh, never mind. I just was texting. I'm sorry. I thought it was a general meeting. It's a
Oh.
board meeting, so scratch that.
Okay.
Okay, no other information. Sorry to waste your
Okay,
time.
I'll take that. Okay, Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Yes, the Economic Development Commission met and the branding initiative is moving along. They're still doing outreach. I think they're planning on coming into town soon. But I had to leave early so we could go to the last city council meeting that we had, so I didn't get all of the details, but there'll be more information to come. I was selected as the chair of the Placer County Economic Development Board.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So that was great. They had a couple things that they're working on. There's something called a CERF Economic Development Pilot that the county is working on. It's a regional effort and they're asking for letters of support. It's up to $50 million on these economic development projects that they're working on. So I asked the city manager to see and Jonathan to see if they could come in and do a presentation on it. So that I think that's a Valley Vision initiative. And then a couple of things that they're working on just through economic development as a county. They're working on figuring out the impacts of the mosquito fire on the local economy. They're working on that. Also, they launched the film office website for our film office for the county. So they're looking for locations. So if anyone wants to submit their cool old house or farm or something for a film location, you can go online and submit those. They're also putting together an incentives group, which Jonathan is on to talk about incentives for businesses to come into different places in the community. And then let's see what else. And they're also working on their social media and marketing. They're really working on having more effective outreach as a county. So more to come on all of that. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Great, congratulations. A couple things for me to report. First, I wanted just to report from Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. We were working on the overall work program and budget for the I-80 auxiliary lane construction, which the I-80 auxiliary lane is eastbound 65 through Rockland Road interchange and westbound 80, extending the 5th lane from Douglas to Riverside. And so construction will begin late spring and will go through summer 2024, but it's hoping, the intent is to reduce that backlog from 65 going westbound towards Douglas and then also eastbound. When you come off of 65, you go, it just immediately starts to narrow down to Rockland Road and it's just a big mess there. So that would address those issues. So there was actually an additional, I think, $15 million cost because PG&E had to increase. There was some kind of fee there. They're going to widen it. Yeah, they're going to widen. And then that's really what they're going to do. So that because it just bottlenecks so bad in there, both eastbound and westbound. It's just terrible. So that is, we did approve the overall work plan and budget for that. The 49 sidewalk gap closure project will go out to bid the summer of 2023 and construction is anticipated late fall. And that's going to work on, part of that will incorporate the city of Auburn's Highway 49, where we don't have sidewalks. So that will be actually affecting, it's on the E.V. Kane side of Highway 49. And so some of our businesses will be receiving some financial, the word is escaping me. They will be impacted because of their entrances will be closed while they're working on that project. And so they'll have to be compensated. Well, Crooked Lane has a sidewalk already. So it's the Highway 49 part. Really, it's from
where those structures are that are kind of below?
It
the
goes
movie
up to
theater?
Palm, so it's along EV Kane, but it's the businesses that are, there's the upholstery place and the bike place and so forth. But it's 49, I'm so terrible because growing up here, I remember all the street names, but Palm, it goes up to Palm, but it's Elm to Palm. That's what I want to say. That stretch there, they'll be putting in a sidewalk
Oh, okay,
on,
where the paint store is.
yes, all of
stuff.
that. And so
On
those
Fort-
businesses.
Kind of near EV Kane. where
That's
EV Kane's on
exactly
the other
right,
side.
by EV Kane. And so
Yeah.
those businesses will be impacted during construction, so they are receiving some financial compensation for that. But it's very exciting that we are moving forward with that. That is actually a state project. And let's see here. Also, we received an update about the Sierra College Fair Free Student Transit Pass. And if you don't know about this, any student who is enrolled at Sierra College that lives in Placer County can ride transit for free. They just have to show their student ID and they can ride it for free. Well, yeah, you can ride it anywhere. You can ride it anywhere. You don't even have to be going to school. It's a program that's being funded through Sierra College and PCTPA. And so it's really trying to get the students and, encourage them to ride the transit to school. But really, they can ride the transit for free anywhere, anytime, any place for free with their student pass. And again, it's a project that's being funded in part by the Sierra College. So we received some statistics. Apparently, I think you have to be like full-time enrolled student. But there also are some high school programs where the students are enrolled. I forgot the name of the program, but they actually are eligible to ride the transit for free too, which is great because the high school kids, some of them can't drive, like my kiddo's not quite old enough, but she could take transit for free. But 10,774 students have taken advantage of this already since it was launched in August of 2022.
Have we talked any more about bringing back an update on our transit and possibly a student pass for our transit? Is that still on the books at some point to do? Because we had talked about just figuring out what it would take and how much it would cost.
I think-
Not a free one, just a
Yeah,
student pass that
I
was more
think
than a.
we talked
separate
about,
step.
and I'm trying to remember Councilwoman Riddell Harris, if we said that would be an item that would come before the council to decide whether or not we wanted to pursue that, because that needs to be an issue that we discuss as
Yeah,
a council.
yeah.
So as opposed to.
I thought it was gonna be mixed in with an update from how our transit is doing and things, so I didn't know. But that's just something that we
Yeah.
should bring back and decide, because we've been asked by several people to.
Yeah,
provide student
it's
pass.
an item we can schedule on a subsequent agenda that we'll talk about whether or not the council wants to pursue a special student pass or what that might look like. But so it'll just be the discussion item, and then the council will then direct or not direct staff to move forward with developing a program. So, and Menjel, did you have your hand up for a reason?
I did, I just wanted to inform the council that we currently do have a student pass for our transit loop. So our traditional transit bus, we haven't brought anything forward yet for the on-demand transit. That's the only thing we don't currently have a student pass.
Yeah, so we have student passes for our loop. So for the fixed loop, there is a student pass, but we don't have a student pass for the on-demand transit. But we'll talk about all those things at a subsequent
Okay,
meeting.
great.
And we have given staff direction to schedule something when we can. I know that
Perfect.
we've got already such a huge list of items that we have to address for sure. All right, so that concludes my on PCTPA anyway. So it was very active meeting last week. Also Pioneer, we met last week as well, and exciting because Pioneer turned 5 years old in February. They were launched in 2018. We have been able to, I believe, if I can remember off the top of my head, we've saved customers like $47 million in rates because we are able to offer rates at a lower cost than PG&E. We'll probably do something in the summer to celebrate our birthday and invite all the old board members back and so forth to kind of celebrate that. So the other thing that's really exciting with Pioneer right now is that we are looking into an opportunity to help the member agencies, those being the cities and counties, all of us that are part of Pioneer, with our compliance on the SB 1383. That's the organics law, specifically with the piece that requires us to purchase back our compost. And not only are we required to purchase our compost back, we have to bring it back and then we have to distribute it every year. And I had asked our city manager, she's going to pull the costs. I remember that the city manager mentioned something. I thought he said something like $90,000 it might cost us to purchase our compost back. And Pioneer is looking into something that will enable us to comply with SB 1383 without having to touch compost. So we don't have to bring compost back at a substantially cheaper rate. And it's through the purchase of credits. So something similar to like the AB 32 air credits. And we are working with Cal Recycle to make sure that there is compliance. There's a program, and I don't want to say too much because this is really cutting edge and we might have just a phenomenal opportunity here. So we're looking into that, but, and certainly we'll get more information at our next meeting, but it's very exciting and it could save us quite a bit of money and we wouldn't have to deal with all that compost because that's a lot of compost. We have hundreds of tons, or I don't even remember what the tonnage is now, but we're all required to purchase that ton. It's all based on per capita. So it doesn't matter how much we encourage people to compost. Are still required to purchase the compost. We might have 100% of people composting. We would still have to buy this compost.
We also should be working legislatively or regulatorily to get that fixed because that doesn't make any sense.
And
either.
the League of Cities has been working very, very hard. You know, it's interesting because Cal Recycle says thou shall do, but they have offered us no programs. And, this is one instance where high metropolitan cities are suffering more than the rural cities because they have nowhere to put that compost. So think about downtown San Francisco. They got a high per capita. That's their problem to solve. But I'm just saying that if anybody can try to nudge the legislature, you think that some of those jurisdictions in the Bay Area would have more clout than us. At least we have some land. But in any event, Pioneer is working on a plan there, and it could, again, allow us to meet that compliance through diversion and then at a much lower cost. So just stay tuned on that. I wanted to let everyone know. And I did have the opportunity. I am on the League of Cities Board of Directors. We had a meeting last week in Artesia, which is where the board president lives. So I had an opportunity to visit the town of Artesia, which I had never been to.
Where is that? Sorry.
It is near Long Beach. So it's right next door to Cerritos. And so we were establishing some of our advocacy programs. We adopted new policies with regards to fentanyl and addressing that at the state level. So really it was our advocacy programs, but it was a very good meeting. And our next meeting will be in April. So in Sacramento, our next board meeting. And that concludes my report. So seeing that there's no further business before the council, I will hereby adjourn without objection. Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. 8 o'clock.
Right.